Okay, good evening everyone and welcome to our June 14th, 2017 City Council meeting. I will call this meeting to order and we will start with the moment of reflection. Do we have Mrs. Montgomery here? Okay, please come forward.
Let's pray. Father, thank you that we can pause to remember, to acknowledge you and know that you love us. And we remember that you have said that if we ask for wisdom, that you would grant it. So we come asking for that wisdom on behalf of the City Council and those members that are here today. Would you grant them discernment and insight and clarity as they make decisions for the good of our community? Would you bless them and their families as they serve? And have your way here today. We pray these things in Jesus' name. Amen.
Thank you. Today is the Flag Day, and we would like to ask Councilmember Gallo to lead us in the pledge.
In honor of Flag Day, ready, begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Great, thank you. Roll call indicates that all council members are here. I have two requests to speak under oral communications. The first one is Shirley Alaman, sorry. Goldman, I'm sorry. Yeah, the handwriting is there. Come forward, please, you have 3 minutes.
I have to say that I'm happy to be here today. It took me a long time coming here. I would say about a year. 1 year ago, I started to smell a stink in my house. And it smelled like sour food. I didn't know where it was coming from.
The timer,
I came to the mayor's office, and several times I left a message there. I wanted to talk to the mayor. One day I was lucky. Olga Ortez was there, and I spoke to her and told her about the problem. She gave me the telephone number of the men who work for the city, and they came to my house day and night, morning and noon. I called them all hours. They were really very nice. I know them by name. I wrote everything down, all the names, telephone numbers, who I called with the whole year. Within the year, I got sick. 3 times I had pneumonia because I couldn't stand the stink in the house. Greg Cartwright, who's the president of Windsor Park, he said, I'll move you, but if it smells in another apartment, I'm not going to move you again. You could put on the air conditioner. However, I don't have $1,600 to pay for rent. It's very easy when you have money and you pick yourself up and you go where you want. I'm not working anymore. I'm on Social Security and I need help. I paid plenty taxes. I started to work when I was a young kid and I really need your help now. You got to get that sewer plant fixed. I was walking in the street. I walk in the street. I went to the 99-cent store today. I'm smelling the stink. I walk in the street. Sometimes it's impossible. You have to close your nose and your mouth because you can't stand the stink in the street. You still have to go shopping. You go into Albertson, you'll smell the stink. Something has to be done. Yeah, I speak to some people and they say, well, there's no money. Find the money. If you have to make a bake sale, make a bake sale. If you have to put on a show to get the money to fix this plant, then do it. I went to the school. I spoke to the school nurse. She didn't even know there was a stink. I said, talk to the kids that are going to school here in Escondido. They'll tell you all about the stink. I'm begging you. I'm pleading with you. You got to get the sewer plant fixed. If you need help, if you need me to help for a bake sale, I'll help you. I'll do whatever you say to get this plant fixed so people stop suffering with this stink. I was walking 2 days ago to Albertson to get milk for breakfast, and I'm covered, my mouth, and it's unbelievable. The stink is, I'm covering my mouth. I get the milk, I want to near Wendy's and on Valley Parkway. I'm covering my mouth. I can't stand the stink. A man stops his car, and he has money in his hand. He wants to give me the money. I said, I don't want your money. He says, are you homeless?
Your time is up.
I said, I said, I really am.
Hello, thank you. We got the message.
Okay,
Thank you very much.
You got the message
We
loud and clear.
we appreciate it.
I'm happy.
Thank you. Jerry Swadley.
Thank you.
Can you top that?
Mayor, Deputy Mayor, and City Council members, my name is Jerry Swedley, and I live in the Escondido Country Club community. Neighbors in the ECU community have observed transients, drug use, and gang activity at the former ECC clubhouse and adjacent open space overtaken by brush and tall weeds. It occurs especially in the evening after dark, and we fear for our safety. Our pets are extremely sensitive to after dark activity in the neglected field and often wake up during the middle of the night. Some neighbors have called the police several times, but they rarely respond. Another neighbor has a searchlight he uses to scare unwanted and unsavory activity into hiding, and others continue to threaten relocation because the city of Escondido seems unwilling to recognize how bad the situation really is and reluctant to hold the property owner, stuck in the rough, accountable for putting us at danger. At best, there's negligence on their part. At worst, it's blackmail and bullying. Today, the neighbors received this text from New Urban West, and I quote, "As we made preparations for this Saturday's community barbecue, we discovered concerning signs of transience, drug use, and gang activity at the former ECC clubhouse. To ensure safety for all, we will be moving the event to a new location." There you have it. Saturday afternoon in broad daylight, and New Urban West thinks it's too dangerous to have a meeting in the parking lot of Escondido Country Club. My first question is, what is the city of Escondido doing to protect its citizens who live in that community? My second question is, what is Stuck in the Rough responsibility and accountability to maintain their property so it's not a haven, and in New Urban West words, for transients, drug use, and gang activity? So we need immediate action from the City Council and not just comments to brush an obviously dangerous situation in your city under the rug without taking responsibility for it, or hold the owner accountable for unacceptable control of what happens on their property. Thank you.
Thank you. Our advice is if you see any gang things, graffiti or anything, call the city immediately. You don't have to wait for the council meeting, but we appreciate the emphasis here. We respond to all the crime issues and public safety issues, but the sooner we get them, the sooner we can respond to that. It's not acceptable, and we will address it. Thank you. Okay, we will make sure they will. Okay, thank you. All right, we go to consent calendar. I need a motion to approve. I have a motion by Councilmember Diaz, a second by Councilmember Morasco. Please vote.
5 yes votes.
Thank you. We move on to our public hearings. Item 5, zoning code amendments, continued from May 24th. Staff report, please.
Thank you, and good evening, Council. Mike Strong, Assistant Planning Director. I'm here to help kick off the item, and then Jay Paul, Associate Planner, will provide the presentation. City staff did present Council with a first iteration of that ordinance on May 24th that was designed to regulate wireless communication facilities within the public right-of-way. During the Council meeting, Council received input on the draft ordinance from representatives from the wireless industry. Based on the concerns expressed by Council at the meeting, Council directed staff to come back on today's date, and during which time, in between, City staff met with 5 industry representatives on May 30th, 2017 to discuss recommended changes of the ordinance. The goal was to solicit feedback directly from the carriers to see what would work and what wouldn't with the draft ordinance. So the suggested edits to the draft ordinance are based on their feedback. And at this point, I'll turn to Jay to provide an overview of the draft changes.
Yes. Before I get into that, I just wanted to briefly go over the meeting we had with the industry representatives and some of their recommendations. And number one was have ordinance standards and a process that would be timely but predictable, where you didn't have a lot of subjective or vague standards or goals where they didn't know what the process was going to be, whether it's going to be administrative, conditional use permit, provided defined standards, and if they met those standards, they could go through the easier and less timely administrative process. So that was one of their key issues. Number two was to allow different levels of administrative review rather than going up to the higher conditional use permit. That would allow them, if they met those certain standards or location preferences, it would go through the easier and more timely process. If they needed to deviate from that, they could go to another level of review, perhaps administrative review, which would be our zoning administrative review, rather than having going up to the planning commission level. However, the director always has that discretion for those certain cases to elevate a project to planning commission review, or applicants can appeal staff decision. Also, they requested to allow more flexibility in the size and number of antennas and the design of them to not only account for the varying existing technologies, but also what they have planned coming down the line in the next year or 2 years to finish out 4G and the new 5G. And they're currently designing those, and we've seen different designs from different carriers for that. Also, to modify the separation requirements to allow a level playing field for all the applicants. So if there was a spot that had capacity issues, they could all address those, because they were concerned that once the first carrier would come in, it would block all the other ones, and they wanted to have a level playing field and allow more carriers to serve those hotspot areas. And they felt those provisions were key to bringing technology quicker to the market and responding to customer demand. So originally, our proposed modifications to the ordinance was establish a new wireless facility permit so we can track them and process them appropriately within the right-of-way. I also encourage new wireless facilities or providers to locate on existing streetlights, but it also allows, through the administrative process, all other appropriate structures within the right-of-way. Traffic signals, utility poles, other appropriate signs, or other vertical structures. Also, to allow for the different levels of administrative review, and that's what we have proposed today. Instead of conditional use permit, and that was some of the recommendations from the council also, is to have those two levels of review. Administrative permits for if they fit in the box, and for deviations of location or design criteria, then they'd move up to that next level, which was the administrative zoning administrator, which allowed for public notice, but it was quicker than the Planning Commission hearing.
Can you clarify the new structures are discouraged line? It's the second bullet point.
Right. We would rather have replacement structures, which would not be a new structure.
Allows on other appropriate structures within the right-of-way on existing things. So, for example, and I bring this up, it was my idea to say if we're missing streetlights in a neighborhood and they want to install a streetlight, we should let them pay for it.
We could do that also.
Okay, but when you say no new structure or new structures are discouraged, that kind of makes it sound like we don't allow that or wouldn't consider it.
No, we would still
new.
consider that, and I think in the way the ordinance is drafted, that the replacement or supplemental streetlights are acceptable. I think what we were looking at is new large structures, for instance, new wooden poles or things out of the ordinary in the right-of-way that we would discourage. That would create more clutter or wouldn't be appropriate for that. So some of the proposed changes are in the review process based on the recommendations from council and the industry. And number one, if you fit into the certain location criteria, the preferred location criteria or the design criteria, it would be the administrative, similar to a plot plan review process, design review, stay in-house. Staff would look at that. And that would be allowed for all structures within the right-of-way, except for in very small instances, a new wooden pole or something that would be very inappropriate or out of character for the right-of-way. So that includes streetlights, utility poles, traffic signals, bus stop, and traffic signs. We just have a preferred a preference list. Look at the streetlights first, then go to the utility poles, then traffic signals, but it doesn't preclude them from locating on any one of those structures. All proposed facilities that conform to the location, design, and size requirements, such as we're proposing 7 cubic feet, 8-inch projection from the pole, max heights or antenna heights, that would also be administrative review. So if you fit in that design box, the easier administrative review. We've also changed it from Planning Commission conditional use permit for zoning administrative review. And those would be for those facilities that don't fit in that design box or in non-preferred locations, such as along non-circulation element streets and residential areas, or placing a pole in the front yard of the single-family residential. We changed that to single-family from multifamily because a lot of multifamilies are along circulation element streets, and those type of facilities would not be out of character with the design and the facilities in the right-of-way, but perhaps we would take a closer look and notify the residents when they're on those narrower residential roads where you don't have that larger equipment. Also, any facility that exceeded the design requirements would be subject to zoning administrative review. So if you wanted to exceed the height, you could. You wanted to put in that replacement pole where we didn't allow it, takes that higher level of review. So it's still available to them. And the director can refer requests to Planning Commission in certain instances. The other changes that we recommend for the ordinance is, and worked with the industry with, is increasing the number of antennas from 1 to 2. Also increase the length of the antennas from 2 to 3 to handle the potential new technologies coming out in the longer antennas. Allow for strand mounts. Increase the total cubic feet or equipment from 6 cubic feet to 7, and that was very similar to City of San Diego's requirement. Some cities have less, some cities have more. We think 7 cubic feet, and we have a graphic to show you later for that, what that looks like if you were going to build all that out on a pole. And we adjusted the separation requirements from 300 feet for all of them to 300 feet for individual carrier. They felt that was appropriate because to serve their needs within a hotspot area. With that, staff is recommending approval of the ordinance and the modifications presented here tonight. I'll hand it back over to Mike to finish the presentation.
Thank you. And just to conclude and provide some high-level summary of what the ordinance is and what the revised changes actually do accomplish. Standards have been utilized by jurisdictions and they have been proven to be accommodating, and even still, the ordinance provides standards that are more flexible than those other jurisdictions. It does strike a good balance between what the industry needs and is able to provide currently today and still preserve the ability to maintain aesthetic quality in our community. The suggested edits allow for an expedited process for projects that comply with specific standards. These standards are necessary to have a fair and predictable process. There are some jurisdictions that have a lot of flexibility and vague language in how they administer new applications. With that vagueness becomes discretion, and that can be frustrating when applied on a case-by-case basis. So some agencies like Vista have no standards but still require new facilities to be at least visually obtrusive as possible, and that is vague language. The ordinance does not exclude any carrier or any type of equipment. All carriers can work under these rules. With council direction, staff will continue working with industry representatives and monitor the wireless ordinance and return to City Council with a status update within a 2-year period. This would allow staff adequate time to analyze the effectiveness of the ordinance, to make sure it's working for both the community and the carriers, and address any changes that may be deemed necessary. Technology and permitting requirements are going to evolve and change over time, and this would allow the city to stay on top of it. This concludes the presentation, and we're available to answer any questions.
Okay, question, Councilmember Masson?
Yeah, thanks. So just a quick question. Process for perhaps a new street light with a small cell device on it in a residential neighborhood, that's a minor CUP? Automatically, or could that be perhaps done administratively?
It depends. In a residential neighborhood on a non-circulation element street,
right.
You've got collectors and major roads, that would be administrative. If you went down a standard residential street and wanted to put one in that area or in front of somebody's house, that would be the zoning administrator review.
Which is public notice package to 300 feet, 500 feet?
500 feet.
Yeah.
It gets posted in the newspaper and the site gets posted too.
And then a meeting, but not a planning commission meeting?
It's not a planning commission meeting, so we could...
It would be a public hearing, or?
It would be a public hearing type meeting, correct, where they could speak at the hearing. Anybody can speak.
And if I may, through the mayor, to provide some context about how that zoning administrator process works, the public hearings are scheduled as necessary. So it's not like a planning commission meeting where we'd wait for a regularly scheduled meeting. This could happen any day of the week, any time of the day. So it does provide considerable flexibility for those type of applications.
Okay. And then the other thing is, I know you had, I wrote down design box parameters. I'm assuming those are realistic parameters. 8 inches off a pole for the current equipment is realistic. It's not 10 inches or 8.5 or something weird like that. I mean, I just.
Let me show you a graphic. I've got one.
I saw some nice ones, and I don't know if it's 8 inches or.
So these are facilities that have been installed that would fit into that parameter. And it shows you a pole, that 8-inch diameter around the pole, and if you fit into the equipment, that would be the easy process. They're small, and we're currently processing a facility just like that right now for Crown Castle. However, some of the new designs and some of the old designs wouldn't fit into that box, and they would automatically go to the zoning administrator
Gotcha.
approval process.
Yeah, it seems like from my perspective, you got to be able to put that street light in a residential neighborhood, this non-circulation element road that needs street lights like that. But, you know, maybe it's going to be as quick as that anyways. And then the other question I had was, we limit to 2 antennas per pole. You know, this smaller technology, I think these are 8x8 or 8x12s or something like that.
These, I think, that was 6.
Paul, can you pull the microphone closer?
That one right there is probably 6 inches deep by 10 inches across by 2 feet long.
Yeah, so the question is, if our space area requirements is 6 feet, why couldn't they have 3 of those on there? Why would we limit to 2? Do we have flexibility in our ordinance that would be able to accommodate that? So if you had 3 carriers that were using the very small compacted facilities, and they're within that 6 feet total requirement, could we have 3 on the pole instead of just 2?
You could co-locate if the pole was structurally.
Right, I understand that. Just assuming the structural and everything else. I'm just wondering, we have this 2 per pole limit, if that's realistic or not.
Well, I think it addresses different things. Generally,
an antenna.
we'll have one carrier on a pole. I don't know if we've seen co-locations on street lights, but you could do that. I think when you get down to that, and let me show you this picture here on the left. When you start talking about antennas, the full-size one on the left, it has 3 standard panel antennas, and those are probably 4 feet long. And that was a small macro facility, as opposed to the other 2 where you've got the antennas on the top, and it could have 1, 2, or integrated antennas in there. You also have designs where, let's say, they don't have the antenna on the top, but they have it radios and antennas integrated into each other, and you could have 2 or as many as you can put inside that equipment box. It really talks about the 2 antennas when you start talking about those panel antennas that you see on the left.
Okay, because those small ones are antenna, and it's the whole system is very compact. So I'm just curious if 3 of those could go onto one pole or not, or if this ordinance would prohibit that because it's only 2.
No, I think we are interpreting that is when you see the panel antennas separate from the equipment. If you can fit in the box and you have integrated antennas, then you're not limited.
Cool. Thanks.
Can you go back one slide?
Councilmember Diaz next.
This one?
Nice one. What's the other picture?
Okay. That one?
This is to show you what 7 cubic feet looks like. This is a mock-up. This is not a real facility here. This is a 2 cubic feet, a 12 by 12 by 2. This is 12 by 12 by 3 feet, and this is 12 by 12 by 2. So if you were in front of a single-family residential house, what that would look like if you had 7 cubic feet on a street light. These are actually existing facilities that probably have 7 or more
This
cubic
is
feet on them.
ugly. The ones to the right.
Let's let you see what, and typically you don't get 7 cubic feet on this type of pole. You generally would see that type of equipment on the SDG&E type poles in areas where they blend in a lot better. I don't know if you would see typically that, but we wanted to provide something to show you what 7 cubic feet looks like, and the one on the left is that.
Okay. Are you done, Councilmember Massa?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Councilmember Diaz?
So there's a state law of some sort making its way through the system about cell phone towers, right? And I have not followed because I can hardly keep up with what we do here. So do you have any feedback that you can share? I can't remember what number law it is, but it has something to do with mounting costs. 649. So can you tell us what impact that has on our ordinance, if that overwrites ours, or if we will have to adapt, or what the issue is? And also the carriers, or we got a letter from one of the carriers asking us to postpone this issue again. So my concern is that they're wanting to have the state law passed before we set up an ordinance. So anything you can share to address those two issues would be great.
Only the periphery of that ordinance, the state law came out of committee. So what it would do, I believe, two things. It makes the pricing that everybody can charge on theirs, I think even across the board, for SDGD City, what they can charge to go on their facilities, if I'm correct. It also would negate most of the ordinance. It would make things more by right to go on the facilities for size and so forth. So we'd have a lot less discretion on the time, place, and manner where these would go. And
we couldn't charge what we charge now?
I don't know the answer to that. I think it just makes the fees more uniform and standard.
I guess I'm a little concerned. So if we pass this ordinance tonight and that state law passes, does it override our ordinance, or are we doing something trying to race them to have some say in how we manage this particular process?
So state law is preemptive. So
okay.
They would supersede any local ordinance and provide direction uniformly across to the 486 cities in the state. But that doesn't preclude our ability to, at least initially before that is adopted, and it's speculative whether or not it would pass through both the Assembly and Senate, for us to take local action within our police powers as it relates to municipal affairs, and aesthetics is clearly within that umbrella.
Okay. I guess I wish maybe I should have prepared better to have read what that law is going to do and how it impacts us, because I don't know.
It's going through the process. It will change a lot. Once it comes out, we will have to revisit our ordinance.
Because we've done all this work, and now it sounds like, in a few months maybe it won't matter, a year, whatever.
Okay.
Okay,
this
thank
is
you.
a public hearing. I have few speakers. First is Michael Fulton. You have 3 minutes, sir. Please come forward.
Honorable Mayor, City Council members. First, I want to thank the Planning Commission for working with us over the last couple of weeks to make some changes to the wireless ordinance. I feel it's very amenable compared to where we were at a couple of weeks ago. The only last concern that we have, from my perspective, is the dimensions of the small cells. Asking for an 8 inches projection off the pole works for one of our solutions, but not for both. We've got one that would need about 11, maybe 12 inches. So, but everything else we saw works really good for us. Just that one little item.
Okay, great. Paul O'Boyle.
Honorable Mayor, members of the City Council, my name is Paul O'Boyle. I'm an attorney representing Crown Castle. I would also like to commend staff. They did listen to us quite a bit. It's significantly better than what it was, but it's not quite there yet. The issue that we really had, first of all, the pictures that Jay put up there, they wouldn't even comply with the ordinance. The 8-inch offset that you have right now is from any point on the equipment. So Jay, if you could pull up that slide, please. Anyway, on the corners of the box, hanging off, that area, the top one, if you can see there, the equipment in the center is less than 8 inches off the box, but at the corners it would not be. Does that make sense to you? I'll probably demonstrate it. If this is the pole and this is the equipment, I can make 8 inches straight off here at the tangent point, but at the corners I'm not going to make it. So it's really, so all the things he showed you about the diagrams, it's not real. It wouldn't comply to your ordinance at all. The way the ordinance is written with that 8-inch offset, you'd probably end up with a 6-inch box, and it would basically mirror the whole entire pole all the way up. You figure, 14 feet of it. So that might not be the answer. Also, if it's a small cell, it should apply in all zones. That's what we're trying to get to. City of San Diego, they allow these facilities to go by right. Some jurisdictions, County of Ventura allows 8.2 cubic feet. Orange County allows 8 cubic feet. So it's a little smaller. I think if Jay's right, if it went to the maximum extent, it probably would be really big. But we haven't gone there yet, and what we're trying to do is not get boxed into a corner. Not to get too lost in the details on this, maintenance should be absolutely excluded from the ordinance. Repair is right there and there now. I think that should be struck. It should just be maintenance at maximum one night a month. They go out there, checks the fuses and those type of things. I don't think you need to get a permit for that. I don't think that's necessary. Specifically, if you go to section K4, I already talked about the tangent point. I think the answer about the equipment should be 8 inches at the tangent point would probably be the way you could address that. The cubic feet should be a bit larger. Also, about the street lights, I think that might be a good compromise. If you go into a local street, it'd be administrative so long as you put a street light in, because then there's a benefit to the community there. Maybe it's a hit or miss thing, I don't know. I do think 2 years coming back is a great idea because we really don't know how these things are going to play out. As was mentioned, the assembly bill is going through, and we don't know how that's going to affect things going down the line. And other than that, it says here in paragraph 6, no overhead wires shall be allowed in areas where undergrounding of utilities has occurred or is anticipated. Where it's occurred, we totally agree. But if we're just talking about lashing one fiber about the length, the thickness of your pinky, we should be able to do it. You know, if you go underground, we're fine paying our way. We just think we feel we'd be put at a competitive disadvantage by having to go underground when everyone else is above ground. So we're ready to pay our fair share. Other than that, it was good effort. Thank you.
Thank you. Leslie, sorry, I couldn't read your last name.
Good afternoon, Mayor, Deputy Mayor, Council members. I'm Leslie Daigle, representing Verizon Wireless. And Verizon appreciates the revisions that have been made to date that do slightly revise the dimensions for these facilities. But what's before you, in our view, falls short in a couple of ways. The first is the city is trying to impose these very narrow, rigid, tight, volumetric dimensions on a technology that's changing. 8 inches today could be 10 inches tomorrow. So our suggestion, and having been an elected official previously myself, is to trust the staff, allow them to use their judgment and their professional discretion, that they have some leeway on these dimensions. Now, failing that, if the city insists that we've got to get down to this sort of 8-inch, 10-inch boxes, then we would ask for a continuance. That's the purpose of our continuance, so that we can define a box that's technically feasible, that's going to work. Because at the end of the day, we're deploying this technology that your public safety relies on, residents rely on. It's a technology that has surging demand. So we all want it to work. So if we could have a little bit more time to work out the size of the box, I think that would be constructive. And then Verizon's second concern, which is presented in a letter, has to do with a finding of necessity. We think that's just plain wrong, that the state has given us a state-mandated right to use the right-of-way, and we do not have to cross through this hurdle or this hoop of a finding of necessity. So that's our other issue. First one are these dimensions, which it's going to wreak havoc on what we're trying to do here, putting in the technology, and then the second would be the finding of necessity.
Okay.
So thank you.
Thank you. Patricia Bushman. Patricia, I'm going to let you speak now. You need to submit the request before the item is heard, or we start the hearing. But go ahead and speak this time. Next time, you need to submit your request to speak before the start of the hearing. Go ahead.
Good afternoon, City Council members. I'm here today just to bring up a couple of items of concern. At the last meeting, I know staff was directed to respond to a series of specific suggestions that were made by the technical service providers. to make it a more flexible process. And generally, I'm in strong support of developing updated zoning regulations to apply to these, because I also recognize the need for these, this important, public service that, helps to promote emergency response and is, vital for all of our first responders and so many public services. So I understand all that, and I'm in support of it in general. I think it's understandable that the representatives from service providers are seeking more maximum flexibility, and they've already made suggestions for a couple of tweaks. So I think that's probably a good idea. In the interest of public health and safety and sustaining the quality of life in local communities in Escondido, citizens would still seek reassurance that this permit process would not relinquish the authority that currently is built into the process, where it has provisions where the planning division has the discretion for cases that involve, if there's any questions or uncertainties or issues that potentially or go beyond what the specific limits are here, that the planning director has the ability to make a referral to the planning commission. So it's not an automatic thing, but it's something built into the process to foresee, those potential situations. So I'd like to see that provision retained in the process, and I think it's a good idea. I think that the service providers are suggesting that the necessity findings be eliminated. I would like to see them retained if possible, because I think they're important. And one of the, maybe staff can help answer the question of what kind of a process you expect will be applied to these facilities. But I kind of expect there will be a need for, as these applications are processed, that staff is going to need to develop and update a database on an ongoing basis to keep track of the locations of all these, their concentration, who the providers are, and there's going to need to be some kind of a master, mapping capability to manage these, I think. So I see that could be time intensive, and I doubt if the current fees that are charged for these wireless permits, would come close to recovering that cost. So I think as before it's finalized, and as you talk about fees, I think it's reasonable to have Escondido consider increasing the fees, because I don't
Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay. All right. That's all what I have in public hearing requests. I'll bring it back to council members' discussion and action. Council Member Diaz first.
Is there anything in this ordinance, any provision for removal of facilities that are no longer needed, no longer being used, or outdated? And the reason I ask is because those pictures of poles you showed us with all that crazy equipment, eventually those are obsolete. Does the company that installed them have a responsibility to come back and remove them?
That would be in the lease agreement. That was where we would expect to see those type of requirements.
Okay, so when a company wants to add an antenna to a pole, we do a lease agreement for the pole or a series of poles.
Correct.
And that language is in there now in our standard lease agreement?
I don't know,
Okay.
to be honest with you.
I don't either, that's why I'm asking. And if it's not in there, can we add a provision that eventually they have to move their junky boxes out of the way when, eventually there'll be something the size of a dime that goes on that pole?
I also would assume that would be written into the permit requirements when we do the wireless facility permit. We do have conditions of approval for all our other projects. When they take them out, they have to remove them, and we have one happening now. So that can be written into also the permit for the project.
Councilmember Diaz, if I could just add, we do have only one lease agreement at this point, and we do require that the provider agree to remove and provide a security for removal of those facilities.
Excellent. That's a good point. Okay, anything else, Councilmember? Okay, Councilmember Massa.
Thank you. Yeah, I appreciate staff trying to work toward a solution here. I know there's kind of competing interests going on. I just a couple of comments. I was concerned about the box that we were painting, and I heard concern tonight that it might be hard to fit into that, so I think we might need to revisit that. the 8-inch constraint. I didn't see in here where we're actually requiring a permit for maintenance, but if we are requiring a permit for maintenance, I don't know why we would do that. It just seems like something we shouldn't be messing with. The cubic footage thing, that was a point that was made as well. Maybe we need to up that. I mean, I think what we're trying to do is direct the carriers to use equipment that's not unsightly like some of the photos we saw, and I know that's what staff's trying to control, and I know that's why we don't want to go into a residential neighborhood with these things without a public notice, but in my mind, we say use the best, most efficient, smallest, tightest technology, and I'll let you go in any neighborhood, right, without a public notice. It's like we all need the service. A couple of those small boxes hanging on a pole is not going to kill anybody's view. So I struggle with that. And I guess the finding of a necessity, I mean, I think that's seems kind of silly as well. I mean, we all know we need this stuff, and I think we could get away from that. But so that's kind of where I'm at. I'd like to see maybe some more flexibility and allowing even more into the residential neighborhoods. I don't know why we need to have a meeting of neighbors and get them all ruffled up just to add a couple of these things on a light pole, or add a new light pole for their benefit. So that's what we're here for, right? To make those kinds of decisions. We shouldn't have to drag the community into everything and have them try to drive decisions and drive policy for us. We're here to set that policy for their benefit. So I feel like we need to take that step and say, hey, let's just do this.
Councilmember Gallo.
Okay. First thing is, you had a meeting with a number of providers on May 30th, right, according to the staff report? And what did you guys talk about? I mean, did the providers not agree with your findings?
We went step by step through the ordinance, and each carrier had an opportunity to identify listed concerns, and at the conclusion of that meeting, we summarized what we heard, and that is reflected in the updated ordinance. One representative that was a speaker here this evening was not in attendance at that meeting. One thing that has come subsequent to that meeting is the identification of this 8-inch radii around the pole, and that was something that was not flagged at that meeting by the carriers. But we are acknowledging through this testimony tonight that it could be problematic. So that's something that can easily be changed, and something that we heard tonight, it was 12 inches would be more than adequate. So.
I agree with, I think we all agree that there has to be some flexibility in this thing because technology changes like every hour. It's just, what you buy today was obsolete 6 months ago, and they're already working on new stuff. So I think the technology is going to change to the point where there has to be some kind of flexibility in the ordinance so that we don't stymie making Escondido a tech hub. Let's see. John brought up the finding of necessity, and according to the letter from Verizon, that to close a significant gap violates state and federal law. Could you kind of explain that to me? What does that mean?
It means that if there was an area perhaps that you was discouraged, the applicant, and it's in federal law, and that they would have to demonstrate that there's a significant gap in coverage. Now, it's fairly easy for them to do that, to show that they have a gap, but that's actually written into federal law, where you could deny projects if they didn't, provided it wasn't, they were trying to fill a significant gap. If they were filling that gap or serving that gap, then you couldn't deny the service.
I kind of got, the way I read through this thing, it kind of indicated to me that we lose a little control on our own right-of-way, but that's not the case.
No.
Right? Okay. Because that would have been a big problem for me. You said we can tweak this thing tonight. Is there, I'd like to hear some consensus. Is there really a need to delay this thing another month or two?
We did last time.
No, they're asking for another,
Right.
what is the term again?
Yeah.
You asking?
Continuance?
Yes.
Continuance. So
Okay.
I don't know.
We'll see. Councilmember Morasco.
Yep, my only two concerns were the dimensions restrictions and obviously the 8-inch radius or diameter. It was the 8-inch radius is going to be problematic because you pencil it out as was mentioned. It winds up being an antenna box that just wouldn't work. So that needs to be changed or modified. And I guess I'm still not quite understanding the finding of necessity. If by right these groups have access to the right-of-way by federal and state law, how are we able to override or restrict that if it's already been granted by federal or state law? And I guess I'm still not fully understanding the explanation. I apologize.
Mr. Marasco, let me see if I can dial that in a little bit. I think their primary argument is that under the Public Utilities Code 7901, that they have basically carte blanche in order to put their facilities in the right-of-way unless it physically obstructs the right-of-way. This T-Mobile case, which is referenced in their letter, talks about aesthetic obstructions. And T-Mobile says that agencies, public entities, can control aesthetic qualities with respect to the right-of-way. And so what they're saying is, in the case where you're asking for necessity, that doesn't have anything to do with obstructions or aesthetics. It's just some other technical issue. And I think the way we would answer that is our overall ordinance relates to aesthetics. And the necessity only comes into play when you're looking at the minor CUP. So what they're trying to do is they're trying to put something in that doesn't fit within the aesthetic qualities and constraints contained in the ordinance. And at that point, what we do is go to the minor CUP process, and then you look at the question of necessity. So it's not a primary question in the ordinance. It's kind of a subtext question as part of the CUP process.
Thank you.
I don't know if that helps.
It did help. Appreciate it.
Great explanation. Okay. Well, I do agree with my colleagues in a lot of things. So I believe we have a consensus on the size of the box, the 8-inch to 12-inch. I think I'm okay with it. The necessity, I don't think that's what the ordinance is about, is to have a balance between flexibility and needs. If you just free for all and put everything you want, whatever you want, that's not going to be good. I don't want to see a light pole in front of my house with the 3 boxes all around it. It becomes really an appearance issue, and we need to have an oversight over that. We heard that that ordinance last week, and we continued it. So if you haven't been in the first council meeting and the second meeting subsequently, we're not going to continue that for another time. I am concerned about I am concerned about the appearance, and having 2 or 3 or 4 and 8 and 12-inch boxes, that becomes a problem. Undergrounding the utilities, we request new development to underground the utilities, and I think somebody mentioned the cables. If 10 years ago we allowed the cables outside, now we need to take action and improve the appearance of our city. So we are a pro-business city here. We would love to have competition. We would love to have technology. I don't think the sizes of boxes is growing, is getting bigger. I think it's getting smaller. We care about the appearance of the city. We have seen some pictures that they are very ugly. And I would have more flexibility on the industrial zones, but on the main commercial, I think we should have some flexibility, but in residential areas, I think we need to have an oversight of that to maintain our quality of life. And if you want to be more competitive, you're going to just slap a box on every light pole, and I think we have to have an oversight of that. And I believe our city attorney's explanation was very, very helpful. Maintenance issue, I don't think we should regulate that. I think it's up to the carrier to maintain those and make sure they are operational. I think having an oversight of removing the old boxes through the lease agreement, I think it's a good suggestion, and it's already being explained. So with these changes, I believe we have consensus on not requiring the maintenance, size of boxes to 12 inches, and I believe these are the two items that where we have consensus on. Do we have another one?
Can I summarize?
Okay. Councilmember Masson, clarification.
Yeah, I just want to, thank you. I just want to clarify. So the size, the 12 inches, I think we got to consider a box, 12-inch box, not a 12-inch circle. Then we won't have those issues of corners sticking out. So to summarize, what I would like to move this thing forward, 12 inches in a box, not a circle, no permit for maintenance.
Right.
The finding of necessity, if that's just to go into a residential neighborhood with non-circulation element streets, I think that's okay. Right. I'm all right with that. On item 6, where we're talking about no new overhead wires where undergrounding of utilities is anticipated. Well, I think we anticipate undergrounding all utilities at some point in time. So I think we need to strike that from that. I mean, and I would be more in favor of giving staff discretion before it goes into the minor CUP. I mean, I think you guys have the tools and the eye and the visibility to be able to say, hey, this makes sense. It's not obtrusive. We don't need to get everybody all riled up. That's okay. This one, it's pushing the border too much. It doesn't look like it's up-to-date technology. Let's send that one off to the CUP minor CUP process. So, if there's a way for you to blend that sort of more staff-level decision into this thing, I'm okay with that as well.
That was your motion. Can you repeat it, please? No, just okay. That's okay. No, so
I think we're really super close.
So we have the three things: get rid of the maintenance, change the box size to 12 inches, and the other one
anticipated
is anticipated undergrounding
6,
of cables.
And more staff discretion.
And more staff. We're probably, if that state legislator move forward, we're going to revisit this issue to comply with them. But I'm comfortable with these recommendations. Yes.
Can I clarify just one
Sure.
thing? When Councilmember Masson said, and you had preferred the 12-inch, would that be 12 inches in diameter? I have some diagrams to show you.
Can you please put it there?
Based on designs that we have seen coming down the pike and potentially addressing those. So we've seen standards where they limited it to 12 inches in width and 10 inches in depth, but some of those with the new technology coming out wouldn't fit in that box. So we did some mock-ups of designs with 12 inches width, 12 inches depth, with about a 1-inch offset from the pole.
Okay.
And on a pole, here you see in the different dimensions here what 12 by 12 by 2 feet. So 2 cubic feet on a pole. So you didn't do that circle around, so you didn't have those issues with the corners. And that would, it'd be mounted probably several feet higher than that. But it gives you a look at what one facility looked like. When that was being installed, neighbors came out and took a look at that, and they said, I don't think I'm going to have an issue with that. Several neighbors came out. The next one is one of the current designs, and this was a mock-up of that, of a 12 by 12 by 3. With they had the antennas set in bookshelf style rather than flat style. And they're all integrated radios and antennas. So that would be 12 feet or 12 inches by 12 inches by 3 feet in length. And it's just got a little bit more bulk in scale on there. Now when you start getting close to the 6 cubic feet or 7 cubic feet or 8 cubic feet, what I wanted to show you on the left was if you added all those together and got to 7 cubic feet, that's what you would see on a typical street light. And that was kind of, when neighbors saw that, they were kind of like, what is that that you're sticking on your pole there? Right. And I got a lot of...
So are we okay with the 12 by 12 by 1?
Well, yeah, I think that's what...
Okay.
That was the whole point, right? This is unobtrusive to me. This is okay, but if we draw that diameter circle, this wouldn't fit.
Right.
So do we need 13 because it's 1 inch off the pole and a 12 by 12 by 3 foot box? That's all I'm worried about. I just don't want to get so constrained where we're going, well, you know, you're an inch too far out, so you can't do that.
Okay. Is the council direction clear? Is the motion clear? Okay. So we have a motion by Councilmember Masson. I need a second. I have a second by Councilmember Morasco. Please vote.
5 yes votes.
Nice work.
Excellent. Thank you, staff. All right, we go to item 6, adoption of fiscal year 2017-18 annual operating budget.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor and Council. Tonight you will be receiving information on the preliminary preparation of fiscal year 17-18 operating budget. The development of the budget has been an effort of all city departments. However, tonight the staff that will be presenting the overview include Joan Ryan, Assistant Finance Director, Jody Coco, our Budget Manager, and myself, Cheryl Bennett, the Director of Administrative Services. Representatives from each department will be available to provide additional information as necessary. Tonight, we will be covering the following topics in our presentation. We have many new items in our budget, so we'll be going over those new items. We'll also be discussing general fund revenue, expenditures, and sources and uses, as well as budget amendments, staff recommendations, and City Council questions and comments. Our operating budget has gone through a very thorough restructuring in an effort to make it a better planning and use tool for the city and the community of Escondido. All departments have focused their budget on council action priorities, which include economic development, fiscal management, community improvement, and public safety. Jody has been the primary staff person who has worked with each department on these new changes, and she will go over in detail the changes and the reason behind those changes. I'll turn it over to Jody.
Back in September 2016, the City Manager provided City Council with a memo proposing several recommended changes to the operating budget document in an effort to make the document more comprehensive. With the help of budget team members from various departments, those changes have been included. The first addition you may have noticed is that the title page now includes City Council pictures. Additional pictures and graphics have also been added throughout the budget document to enhance its understandability and usability. Within the introduction section, the city's mission, values, and strategic goals, which are the foundation and focus of the budget, have been added. The financial structure, policies, and process section includes fund department structure of the city, showing the relationship between funds and departments with narrative explaining the different operating budget fund types that make up the budget. It also includes budgetary and financial policies that were approved by City Council on May 3rd, which help guide the development and administration of the operating budget and help to safeguard resources. And then the budget process section has been enhanced with budget cycle and budget calendar graphics. Regarding all sources and uses pages, the second future year has been eliminated. Future year projections are now included as part of the multi-year financial plan summary with a focus on the general fund. The descriptions of the departments within the department summaries have been enhanced to give the reader a better understanding of the function of each department, which can also be useful to new employees. The department summaries also now include an org chart by function to give a clear visual of the function of each department, as well as a chart highlighting the 4-year historical trend of each department's line item detail. The line item detail has been revised to include 2 years of prior actual data for comparison to the current year revised budget and the 17-18 proposed budget. Reporting 4 years worth of data is now a consistent theme throughout the budget document. The sources of information for the budget format changes are the Government Finance Officers Association's Building a Better Budget document and budgets of various other cities. In Chapter 27 of GFOA's document, which is titled Understandability and Usability, it is recommended that excessive detail be avoided. In addition, research has proved that the number of other cities that have a budget document with the amount of detail that Escondido had is very rare. For example, both the City of Del Mar and the City of Oceanside report their expenditures at the account number level, as you can see right here and right here, and with the summary at the category level, such as employee services, M&O, capital outlay. The City of Carlsbad only reports at the category level. So for these reasons, and because the budget document should report at the summary level rather than the micro detail level, detail under any account number has been removed to create a more practical and efficient reporting tool. The position count information is included in the budget summaries for each department, the authorized positions list, and is also mentioned in the major budget impacts area of the budget. In addition, salary information is available on the front page of the city's website. Under Quick Links section, there is a link called City Salary and Benefits Information. All of the financial schedules and summaries are now together in one section towards the front of the budget document. The revenue, expenditure, and transfer schedules have been revised to include 2 years' worth of actual data. The authorized positions schedule now includes volunteer hours worked for certain departments. And there are also 5 new schedules or summaries within the budget document. A schedule of available fund balance has been added. During the budget process, available fund balance amounts are analyzed and projected for the year, which are reflected in the second column of this schedule. There are instances when departments project a use of fund balance to balance their proposed budget. One reason to do this may be to lower the amount of escalating fund balance, since it would not be appropriate to maintain too high of a balance. These amounts are in the 4th column, and they tie to the amounts noted on each of the applicable sources and uses pages. And then the difference between these 2 columns is what the ending available fund balance is projected to be at the end of 2017-18, which is the 3rd column. This schedule also provides an explanation or definition of fund balance and reserves, as well as explanations for changes in available fund balance greater than 10%. The next schedule that has been added is a capital expenditure summary. This summary provides the definition and total proposed budget amount for the CIP budget, as well as capital outlay costs that are included in the operating budget. In addition, a discussion of the major capital projects is provided. This is just a summary. As a reminder, CIP-related information will be presented in detail next week on June 21st. Next is the long-term debt summary schedule. In the past, questions have come up regarding when certain debt will be paid off or what certain debt was issued for. This schedule answers those questions and provides information such as the type of debt, funding source of the debt, and total principal and interest due during the budget year. The city is subject to certain debt limits, and this information is also now included in the budget document. The legal debt margin summary schedule describes the legal debt limit and discloses debt subject to the debt limit. The city is well within this debt limit. And the last schedule that is being added to the budget document is the multi-year financial plan. This plan is a tool used to maintain financial structural stability. It projects revenue and expenditures for 3 years after the current proposed budget year. The various assumptions used for these projections are included on the schedule in the budget document. Currently, deficits are projected for fiscal years 2019 through 2021, primarily due to conservative increases in revenue of 2% each year and significant increases in the cost of PERS. Finance continues to monitor economic conditions. Revenue and expenditure projections will be continuously monitored, and adjustments will be made both quarterly and during the annual budget process in order to maintain a balanced budget.
So this graph shows the general fund revenue trend over the past 10 years. Beginning in fiscal year 10-11, we're showing an average increase in general fund revenue of about 4%, and we're projecting 3% growth in revenue for fiscal year 17-18. During the preliminary operating budget hearing, Councilmember Diaz asked how aggressively grants are being sought by city staff. This slide shows that beginning on July 1st of 2016, the city had $28.3 million in available grant funds to be spent by city operations or capital grants or capital projects. Of this total, $15.1 million were for utility capital projects, $5.3 million for street projects, $3.3 million for public safety, $3.5 million for community services, and $1 million for community development. This next chart shows the increase in general fund expenditures of about $6 million in fiscal year 17-18, or an increase of about 7%. The reason for this change are listed on the right side of this slide. Employee services are projected to increase by about $3.4 million. This increase is made up of projected salary increases, a projected increase in PERS contributions, increased contributions to workers' compensation, and other employee overhead. Maintenance and operation costs are projected to increase by $2 million. Part of this increase is due to the addition of recreation to the general fund. In addition, the planning department has increased their contract consulting services, which will be offset by project applicant revenue. Internal service charges are projected to increase by about $900,000 or 7% compared to the prior year, and this is mainly due to the addition of the recreation fund to the general fund and increased radio charges due to the financing of the next-gen RCS infrastructure and portable and mobile radios that support this system. And then allocations out for services provided to other funds have increased by approximately $400,000. Amendments are being proposed to the preliminary operating budget that you received on May 31st. These amendments include the following. Now that the settlement agreement was finalized on May 17, 2017, the Water Fund is proposing the amendment to their operating budget to make a full payment of the San Luis Rey settlement amount. This amount will come from Water Fund balance. It has also been determined that the department assistant position in the Water Fund will be providing services to both wastewater and environmental programs. It is requested that the Water Fund allocate out to be revised to reflect the changes by allocating this position 25% to wastewater and 50% to environmental programs. It is also requested that the temp part-time position in the video services department be reclassed to full-time position. And in addition, it is requested that rent of $35,000 be removed from the city manager's office budget, as this amount is now budgeted in the engineering department budget. And this time I'm going to hand it back to Cheryl to do the conclusion.
So in conclusion, the City of Escondido's government is a service organization, and our budget reflects that reality. Over 85% of our general fund operating budget is based on cost staffing to provide services to keep our city safe, clean, and efficient. Our sources of revenue and our uses of that revenue are depicted in this slide. Of the $99.4 million general fund budget, nearly 80% or $80 million is dedicated to the health and safety of our community with our police, fire, and public works budgets. In summary, we are presenting a balanced budget that is comprehensive in detail and incorporates the City Council's priorities of public safety, city appearance, financial, structural stability, and includes the city manager's implementation of a safe, clean, and efficient city. The city does face challenges in the coming years, as discussed with the long-range planning tool that we provided earlier. This includes plans to address the increasing cost of CalPERS, as well as preparing for a slowing economic growth. So in conclusion, this is our final slide. After your questions and considerations, we request that you approve Resolution 2017-75 adopting the operating budget with listed modifications, and Resolution 2017-76 adopting the appropriations limit for fiscal year 2017-18.
Great. Thank you. Great presentation. I have two speakers. Let's get those, let's get the public hearing, open the public hearings, and we have Patricia Borschman, followed by Vanessa Valenzuela. Yeah.
Good evening again. I transmitted my personal comments in advance through the online system, so you've already seen these. So I'll make it sweet and short. Is it possible to draw up the graphic that showed, in the staff report, there was, it was like a 2-page staff report, and then there was an attachment A. Is it possible to display that? Anyway, I'll just start describing it.
Mm-hmm.
In this attachment, at the top, it's a graphic that shows, summary of all these financial data, and at the bottom, there's a series of footnotes that pertain to their explanations to, provide more information about the figures that were described at the top. And what I'm concerned about, or what drew my attention, was in the conclusion, it says, another goal of the city is to maintain balanced budget without use of reserves in order to completely fund assumed increases in expenditures. Revenue would need to increase by 4% in 2018-19, 8% in 2019 and 20, and 3% in 2021.
Next slide.
Well, anyway, this confirms that there's going to be, if your proposed budget that you're considering tonight is relying on substantial revenue increases that I don't think are realistic. And, the summary that I heard from Cheryl, indicated that, the budget before you is supposed to be reflecting reductions in revenue projections. And so to me it sounds there's an internal inconsistency there that, she's described, that this budget reflects reductions in projected revenues, and here in the footnote, talking about increases from 4% and 8% and 3% in 2021. So to me, I observed an internal inconsistency that's disturbing.
Okay, thank you. Vanessa Valenzuela.
I also submitted my comments via email, so the council all has a copy. The most specific items that I wanted to address were in regards to the new format that does not show detailed salary information, if that can be provided as an appendix to the budget. Still be included, but maybe not in summary format, but still be included in the published budget. My second question is to ask the council or the staff what's been done to address the $102,000 that's being allocated to the Reedy Creek Golf Course, and why hasn't anything been done to address to make it solvent? The next item I wanted to ask about was specifically that $500,000 for a skate park is 0.5% of the city's budget, and I just can't believe that there isn't a way to include that in this year's budget. So I want to ask the council specifically to propose for the next agenda a budget committee, and I think it's important to have public input, and I think that it would I just would like, I think that it's important for the public residents to be able to work with city staff to develop a budget that reflects what the residents want. So I'm asking you specifically, Councilman Marasco, Councilman Masson, Mayor Abed, Councilman Gallo, and Councilman Diaz, for two of you guys to propose it in this, after this hearing is over, for the next agenda, to have staff put together information about how to create a budget committee. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, with that, I'll close the public hearing, bring it back to council discussion and action. I don't have any requests. Council Member Masson?
Thank you. I really like the new budget, the new look. You addressed all of my concerns from the last time we looked at the budget with the unallocated reserves, and that was presented very well. So good job on that. I really like that. I like the facts that we have been transparent through this whole process, that we are showing more than the 3 cities that you put up on the slide, and we have been for years. So I appreciate that fact, and I think our constituents do as well. Just a couple of items to address some of the speakers, these internal inconsistencies that were brought up on the attachment A as part of the staff report. I don't see those as internal consistencies. I see those as budgeting out long-term, long-range, and not assuming 3, 4, 5, 6% growth, but assuming a reasonable growth. And that future budget also includes PERS allocations that really haven't been set or determined yet, but they're based on the numbers that we know as of today, which may change in September when we have our whatever that guy is. Workshop. Yeah, workshop. So I think it's a great way to present this to us, and I appreciate that fact because there's reality in there, and we don't control revenue growth. We don't control a lot of the costs that we have. So I appreciate that, and I appreciate you pointing that out. The salary info is online. You can get that off our website. It's very public. It always has been. So I don't know that we need to muddy the budget document with that. In terms of Reedy Creek and the solvency on that, that's a kind of a different situation. That was a bond that we're paying back. It's a flood control facility, so it's there to store water so downstream doesn't flood, particularly at the North Broadway crossing. And it's what we have been doing is we've been working with the operator. We added foot golf, so that's helped out a little bit. And then it's really kind of an asset that we just can't say, okay, we're not going to spend money on it and keep the thing going. So that's what I would have to say to that. The skate park, I'm with you. I want to see that happen, and I think there's money in this budget and our CIP budget to make that happen. So I don't know that we need to get involved in that. And as far as the budget subcommittee, I know we used to have one, and I don't know. We haven't had one since I've been on the council, so I don't know what that actually would add to or muddy the process, but I have very good confidence in staff, understanding our policy direction and bringing that back to us in a clear document. So those are my comments. Thank you very much. It's a great budget. I had a few questions earlier that were answered by staff, and I'm real happy with it.
Councilmember Diaz.
Well, that was kind of light. I was hoping you'd have some real questions. So I do, of course, have questions. I'm going to start with a quick explanation of the budget subcommittee process that we used to have. There used to be 2 council members appointed, and there would be robust public sessions in the Mitchell room with review and documents and questions, and staff would present, and it was a lot more information than we have now. But more importantly, the reason we dissolved it is because, and I agreed to this, at the time, I was on the budget subcommittee, and I agreed with the proposal to dissolve it because I thought every council member should have the opportunity to ask that many questions and have that much information provided by staff, not only for our own benefit in decision making, but for public benefit in understanding how these numbers are arrived to, because sometimes we just put numbers in a report or something like this. Either people are not looking at them, we're not actively trying to engage them, or they don't understand them, and so there are no questions. We used to study the budget document. We used to engage the public in the budget process. We shied away from that. I have to say I fell for it. I thought, yes, all 5 of us should be owning this document and participating robustly, and it just over the years dwindled to now this is my only chance to ask questions about the budget. And I always ask questions in public because, again, I can ask staff privately, but then the public never has the opportunity to see what I'm asking or to hear those answers. And so we hoard that information as council people, and hopefully we're hyper-informed, but it's also our duty to make sure our community understands what we do. So that's the history. In this budget document, I have to agree with Deputy Mayor Masson that it is much improved over prior years in many ways. I like the fact that you've included history of the city. You've included sort of refreshed graphics and a very simple description of how money flows in and out of the city and generally the departments that it comes in and out of and what the functions of those departments are. A lot of this information was available in scattered documents in the past, so if you wanted it all in one place, you had to go hunt for it. And I think every year we have some feedback about what we'd like to see in this document, and you've clearly been incorporating some of that feedback here. I do have, I guess I felt a greater need to know more about the unfunded CalPERS calculations that you've included. Now there's line items that show the funded part, or the normal CalPERS liability versus the unfunded CalPERS liability, and there seemed to be not a whole lot of robust explanation about why we start calculating those with the upcoming fiscal year, but we didn't retroactively calculate, and we know that we have current unfunded liability now. So you can just take some notes, and if there's anything I mention or ask that you can answer, that would be great. If you cannot, then I can accept that as well. Moving through this document, I have a great concern about page 1, where we say that as part of our business process, we will be looking for opportunities to outsource city operations such as graffiti eradication, library services, plan checking services, shopping cart and retrieval, and other areas where cost savings or additional efficiencies can occur without disrupting service levels. And I would venture to say that outsourcing any currently public function of the city is something that the entire community also needs to have some advanced access to information and participation in. So I have great concerns that we're putting that out there in a document without ever having really addressed it publicly. I know it's been discussed privately, but not publicly. I also completely disagree that excessive detail should be avoided. I think all of the detail that we could possibly have at this point on this document, which is the most important thing that we vote on all year long, all of that detail is helpful. In the past, we were able to see positions, position titles, position reclassifications, additions of staff, reductions of staff. We were able to see all of that, not with names, but with functions. And now we have a summarized line item, and I'll use the city council budget as an example. We, as a city council, we cost the city $450,000 in our department, and it says we have 5, there's a staffing chart, it says we have 5 full-time people. And that's simply not the case. We have 1 full-time person and 4 part-time people, but that's splitting hairs. Under the council salaries, it has one completely collapsed row of information about what the total cost is for all of us. It used to have the mayor's salary and the council member's salary. Under every department in this budget, it used to have the director of the department, the assistant director, the associate director, whatever the levels and titles were. That detail was available not only for us to provide oversight, but for the public to have a sense of what those salaries were. And it is public information, but it is now no longer convenient in the document that I have depended on for, this is my 9th year going through the cycle. I'm now without information that I used to have that I truly valued. So it might seem easy for some of us to say, okay, yeah, it all adds up to a balanced budget proposal, but the devil is always in the details. And if we're not providing oversight of those details, then we miss an opportunity to identify some things that later we might regret not having noticed. So in looking at just the city council budget, which I feel entitled to criticize because I'm in this budget, I feel like there should be more information here. For example, professional services and contracts, account number 5131, $64,500. I have no idea what those contracts are. There should be detail there. Who are we paying and what amounts are we paying? Dues and subscriptions of $60-something thousand.
Would you like to know what these expenses?
So I hope that you have this detail, but I would like to know that about every department, because every single department has those same line items. I know, for example, that we pay Innovate 78, and it's probably in this budget, right? It's buried here, but it's not clear here. And so to me, that's a loss of detail that I would appreciate knowing. And quite frankly, I may not even question it further if you just show it to me. Now I'm stuck feeling like I don't know what I'm voting for. And then the Humane Society, I bring this up every year. It's normally we contract for animal control services as an expense of our police department, which by law, I guess that's the best place that it fits within our budget. And historically, I've been able to see that it's nearly $1 million. Now it's a line item that says $1.9 million, which I assume this is where it is, because I don't actually know that that's where it is. $1.9 million of professional services or contracts,
And I think that $1 million for the Humane Society is in there, but I don't know what else is in there. So to me, this is a disservice to the public to not be more clear and transparent about it. Not everybody is going to want to read it, but those of us that do would have appreciated seeing it here. So I suggest that for the next year's budget, we revert to the original format and include that detail. Some typos, page 12, wastewater. I assume this is a typo. The wastewater fund, bottom of page 12 under wastewater. Sources of funding is estimated to be $82.6 million, an increase of $47.5 million over the prior year estimate. Did we really increase $47 million?
I'm sorry. It includes SRF loans if you read further down.
It has loans are included in the $47 million?
Correct.
Okay. That answers my question.
$46.3 million to fund wastewater and recycled water capital projects on the next page.
Okay, and on that same page, under CDBG, it says one full-time position will be eliminated. Under home, it says we'll have a 10% decrease. Successor agencies, we anticipate eliminating positions. I feel like this is probably because of our allocation being uncertain, but nowhere else have we really talked about eliminating positions. So it's nested there. I also found on one page, page 27, a separate policy on writing off bad debts has been adopted by the City Council and is located at the city website at, and then there's no address, page 27. I'm gonna give this back to you with my notes so you can look at it if you'd like. There are in the summary sections, revenue schedules on page 36. We have some. I always look for the drastic changes year over year. And so I look at, okay, are we 2 or 3% changes or are we really big numbers? And so some numbers catch my eye. And for example, vehicle code fines and parking ticket fines down 29%, up 22%, other court fines up 66%, miscellaneous agencies, 105% increase.
There's reasons for these,
and so, but I'm looking at this and not finding these reasons. And so, if we had a budget committee, if we had more robust dialogue, there might be.
Ms. Diaz, if you are throwing numbers and you want answers, that's the time to get the answers. We have spent time with Cheryl Bennett and the staff, and our questions were answered. But either you throw figures, let them answer the questions and explain to you what these figures are. You make it sound like it's a secret, but the staff has explanation for everything you are doing. And I'm not disputing your questions, but let the staff answer those questions.
So what I'm pointing out is that if there were details, I wouldn't have these questions, and that's really my point here.
We got it. Yeah.
Do you want to answer them because you look like you know the answer?
Yeah. Go ahead.
So wait.
Wild changes, page 36.
So what particular number? Okay, vehicle code fines. We worked with police department to get this figure. We did notice that the numbers are down, and this, and it's actually addressed in the staff report where it talks about it has to do with the way they're aligning their staff right now. Let's see, what were the other one? I know you talked about the other court fines. In fiscal year 15-16, there was an audit, and so the way the county handled it is they deducted the amount that they had overpaid us in previous years from other court fines, and so that's why the 15-16 number is low.
I'll skip to another one, page 37, streetlight power charge, $1,800 1 year, $29,000 1 year, now it's back down to $2,000. And so the only reason I find these is because they stand out for the variance. So, and we've been talking about street lights a lot and replacement of bulbs, and I'm suddenly interested in what it costs us to power a street light.
What? I'm sorry, what were you?
Street light power charge, page 37. I guess it's like maybe a little bit below halfway down the page.
Yeah, that one I'll have to look into. It's not a real large amount, but I can look into that one for you.
And special, a little bit further down into other revenue, special event cost reimbursement.
Actually, we need to change the title of that. We talked to Ed about this. Councilman Member Gallo met with us yesterday, And the title of that needs to change to reimbursement from outside agencies. So the reason for that large increase, I think we talked about this, the planning department now is going to hire an outside consultant to help review some of their plans, and the applicants will then reimburse the city for those costs, and that's why you're seeing that large increase.
Okay, public art, page 39, $203,000 for 16-17, and then we're budgeting $490 for next year. Is this from the public art fee?
Correct, and we work with planning and building. They look at the projects that are in the pipeline, and from that we base what we expect to collect in public facilities and public art fees. So that's why the large increase, because of the projects they see that they're projecting to complete or collect those fees in 17-18.
And I don't know that, I haven't seen any evidence that we're trying to pay for a big art installation that would consume that amount of money.
Well, part of this too, you're going to be seeing when we bring back the CIP budget, because these are CIP fees.
They're in there. And then page 41, recycled water usage, maybe 5 or 10 from the bottom of the page, 858, 747, and then 0.
Okay, wait a second.
Under wastewater, 1, 2, 3, 4 down from the title header.
I think that's really a function of how they're budgeting. So when they are budgeting, they're doing it in summary, and they're including, we get the budgeted amounts from the actual department. So those are summarized in the service charges. So that's why the service charges are so much higher, because they're summarizing. So do you see how in 16-17 and 17-18, the service charge line is 27.9 million. So they're summarizing it and not providing all the detail.
So you've collapsed some fees into one line.
Correct.
So that makes it really hard for me to compare last year to this year when I had detail. Now I don't. The next, we'll skip ahead a little. So library. I want to talk about the library because it was specifically listed as something that we intend to consider outsourcing. So at what stage, if this budget says we're looking into it, at what stage would we engage the public in that, and how would it affect our budget?
I think we've kept council up to date. Right now, the current stage of that is we've had several meetings with LSS, which is the company that provides that. We had a staff level meeting for about 4 or 5 hours, questions and answers, and exchanged information. We've asked LSS to give us some fixed numbers so that we can actually, Cheryl's department will do some costing on that. We're in the process of setting up a meeting where LSS can make a presentation to the Library Board of Trustees and give them a question and answer period. We're thinking about doing some tours, and then only after we gather all that information, we'll come back to the council, probably in a public setting, and present our findings, if it's viable. If there's no cost savings, staff probably will not recommend moving forward. There don't seem to be any customer service issues so far. I guess my point is that's a task that's underway, that it's impossible to say at this point whether or not it will actually occur or not. So it certainly would, I think it'd be irresponsible to adopt a budget that assumes it either will or won't.
I'm glad to hear you say that. As part of all of these research projects or research activities you're doing to determine if this is a smart move or not, I would encourage us to allow some public input, some public feedback. If we're going on a tour, presumably we'll take a bus or a shuttle of some sort. We have in the past, I don't know if you were here, I was here, of course you were here. We've done a shuttle tour of the city to look at facilities for potential improvements, and we did invite the public to participate up to the capacity of the vehicle that we were all in. So something like that. So here's what I'm concerned with. the library, like the police department, like the fire department, has a unique following, and a lot of community value is placed in that service. And so if we're having a discussion about outsourcing that function, I think it's critical that we allow the public to participate in this process with us, not just tell them the answer of our findings at the end. And that's not maybe a budget question. I just want to impart that because...
I understand that, but to some extent, Councilmember Diaz, you have to let staff do their job. And right now on the library outsourcing, my biggest concern is that folks seem to think we're going to do that when we haven't even determined if it will save us any money yet. And I, frankly, the way I do my job, I'm not going to get people all riled up if we don't save any money on it. So the first thing I've got to have the finance department do is, well, first of all, we have to know what the proposal is. What does it look like? Then we have to determine if we're going to save any money. And if we're not going to save any money, there's no point in arranging bus tours. So
Well, you said we were going
I have a very methodical process, and it'll be presented to the council for a policy decision if it makes sense. And other than that, my direction from the council is to explore things that save money and make sense financially. So that's the threshold question.
No, I understand that direction, that I've heard that direction, but it's also maybe a request on my part that when we consider outsourcing of something that is cherished in our community, it's not about not letting you do your job or having somebody else tell you. It's that we will alarm people if we don't let them participate. That you don't have to do anything I say. It's a suggestion. I think it's a valid one and a valuable one. And quite frankly, I think it would earn us a lot more support if, in fact, there is a cost saving. People would have come along with us to validate that, and there wouldn't be the suspicion of government. So moving on. Let's talk about professional service contracts under the police department, page 194. I assume this is where our Humane Society expense is supposed to be listed.
I believe we have another jurisdictions included in that. Do we have another? Yeah, I think the cost is for both jurisdictions for the Humane Society services.
So
That's my recollection. I have a very...
Every city has to provide animal control services somehow. We contract that out with the Humane Society, and there used to be a number right here that told me how much we paid them every year. And from a distant memory, there's a contract we have with them where basically they pass through their expenses for serving our community. Every city's supposed to pay their own share, so we're not paying more than we have to.
A minute, I think we have an answer.
Good.
So yes, animal control is in professional services at the same amount as last year.
Which was 900?
55,245.
245. Okay.
It's the same year, the same as last year.
Okay, so they haven't passed any increases along to us?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay.
No.
Well, it's always been the Humane, it's been the Humane Society all my years here. And the number has creeped up, so it's holding steady around 900 and something right now.
That's like with a different agency.
Well, the Escondido Humane Society was absorbed by the San Diego Humane Society, but they're still providing the function for us. Art fees, I already asked about art fees. Reedy Creek Golf Course I ask about every year. I already know the answer. I too am bothered by not being able to stabilize our subsidy. I know we've tried disc golf, glow-in-the-dark golf, night golf, all kinds of additions. We've purchased equipment for them, and we still have never really been able to get further with it. So do we have anything new we're going to try this year?
So give the golf balls back.
1 second, please. So I think the Reedy Creek, we are getting close to retire the bond debt.
I'm going to let Cheryl respond to that. She's the staff member that's most knowledgeable.
Yeah.
Okay, so with Reedy Creek, we have been actively trying to explore different ways to increase revenue. Unfortunately, as we've discussed before, the golf industry has not been thriving like it was in the past when the golf course was built. So it has been a big challenge. They do JC Resorts, who manages the course for us, does everything they can to be as efficient as possible. However, for example, the end of this fiscal year, you're going to see another subsidy that we have to deal with because essentially during the rainy season, they were underwater. There was nobody golfing out there. So it will continue to be a challenge. As far as when the debt's retired, it's not until 2030.
I think the Art Center debt's the one that's going to end soon. Yeah. And if I could give you a head start on telling me what page that debt summary is on, because I looked in the debt service fund area and there's just a...
It's page 59.
Thank you, because I couldn't find it in the debt area. CDBG, we already talked about. Rental subsidies. Page 250 under the Successor Housing Agency. This is the rental subsidy number that we were talking about last week for seniors, right? I think I'm correct. 250, page 250, rental subsidy 5136. Account code 5136. We're reducing it again.
So back when the redevelopment agency was the demise of the redevelopment agency that eliminated the ongoing funding for it, we now fund the program through loan repayments alone. In about 2014, what we did was we closed the program so that we continued to serve all of the people who are on the program until they're able to get onto Section 8 or they leave the homes that they're currently in. And so over time, a couple of people have left over the last year. So we'll continue to serve the people who are being served.
So we're not taking any new people on?
Correct.
Okay, that's a challenge because there are plenty of people that qualify based on the lowest income. There's like that 30%.
Yeah, 30%.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Okay, so when we look at other funds and trying to talk about, housing support through agencies, it seems to me this is an area where there's a lot of need. So I'd like to, in the future, see us figure out how to expand this number, either through a company like Interfaith, who has a senior housing kind of function, let them manage it if it's about us not managing it, but that there's a significant need in this area. Redevelopment, there is reference in the staff report about the city receiving $16 million over a 5-year repayment schedule. It's on the second page of the staff report, and I don't see that reflected on what I assume it should be seen or visible in this page 268, successor agency redevelopment. Seems like the place where this would be.
We don't start getting repaid until 2018-19. So if you look on the general fund multi-year financial plan, that's where you're going to see it. So in the staff report, and I believe it's also in the document. I don't know what page, but
it is there.
Okay, so we're 1 year out from seeing it in this budget.
Correct.
So when I'm looking at page 272, next year I will see 18-19.
Correct.
And that's when the trickle will start. Okay, that is good. And we're going to talk about what to do with that money later.
Yes.
Bond debt, bond interest, page 279. Does this number, and I don't have it in front of me, does this number tie back to our debt obligations? Bond interest, 5 million, and then it was 2 million, and now it's 3 million. Page 279.
Where's the debt?
That's presumably all of our debt interest.
Let me see. What page is that? Correct. That's all. Well, no, it's just the principal and interest payment for 17-18. It's so the general obligation bonds is what you're looking at. So if you add,
so I see the principal, but the interest, and I guess what is not clear to me is, what of all of our debt is included in here, because I think we have more debt than that.
Some of our debt is a lot of our debt is part of water and wastewater. And then the community facilities districts and the assessment districts, those are not included in this document. It's not really our debt, it's more pass-through.
Okay. And then a question on workers' comp, page 366. we are self-insured, meaning that we fund our workers' comp insurance ourselves. So it comes directly out of our budget? Is that how it works?
Correct. So we are self-funded up to $500,000, and then we go into excess insurance.
So on the benefits paid, I can see our regular full-time workers' comp insurance, it says $72,000. Is that really all that we pay every year? Pay our workers' compensation at the top of page 366.
That's the staff member that they're paying. Are
Oh,
you
the
talking about-
staff member, okay.
Looking at employee services?
Yeah.
So it says workers' compensation insurance. Okay, but that's an employee that we pay to manage this.
Correct.
Ah, that makes sense now. It did not make sense to me before.
You have to go down into the M&O section to see what we're actually paying.
Okay, benefits paid. Is that what we pay out to employees on workers' comp? 1,018,000?
Plus the medical services.
1.8 million? Okay, so
Maybe that's it.
okay, that was actually very helpful. So in general, I don't feel that this is a bad budget. I don't know that it doesn't feel like we're wasting money or spending money on the wrong things, but I do really truly believe that I prefer to have a document with more detail. Deputy Mayor Masson said earlier he's glad to see we're doing at least what others, that we've been more transparent than other cities. We were, and now we are just like other cities. So they were doing less than us. So good for us for all these years doing more than was expected or required. And I really would like to see us remain in that bucket. They can do whatever they want, but we have to do what I think is best and easiest for everybody to be comfortable with the most important decision we make all year about how we spend our money. So I'm curious to see what, if any, other questions you have. Every time I read this, any of the city documents, really, I feel like they're so robust, there's so many moving parts. I'm always learning something that I hadn't noticed before or something new. So I do value reading this, and you spend a lot of time putting it together. I hope you at least appreciate that I looked at it. And I think in the future, I really would like us to have a public budget committee discussion, not in here, but in the Mitchell room, like a workshop, to be able to get more feedback or teach our community about this document and why it's important and how they can influence it. So I'll be happy to hear your thoughts from the rest of the council.
Thank you. Councilmember Morasco.
A couple of things. First of all, see the coordinated blue outfits to try to calm us down, to soothe us. We're talking about money, we're talking about budgets. Very, very, very good. I think it's an excellent format. It's very user-friendly. I appreciate it, and I appreciate the way it was constructed and the way it moved smoothly into policy in particular. I really liked seeing in all the different areas, starting at like page 23, adequate general fund reserves will be maintained, and then highlighting the policy and what it is. On the next page, revenues will be projected using methodology that is reasonably conservative in the policy that supports that, because this is important. This is what the council has worked and the staff has worked at creating this policy, this philosophy that permeates throughout this entire document. And it's initiated in these first pages where these policy and reasonings are highlighted. On page 25, grants will be actively sought, but only as appropriate and with suitable oversight to ensure compliance, something that has been very important to me for many, many years. I'm really glad to see that in policy explains the reasoning behind that. It all goes back to council philosophy and how we believe the city will best be managed financially in years to come. The following page, cash and investments will be effectively managed. Again, the policy about safety, liquidity, and yield are highlighted. So I really appreciate that. I thought it was very helpful and very reassuring that the entire document is based upon that type of a of a belief system. I do think we need to point out on page 53 that since Mr. Epp has taken over, our total general fund full-time positions is now at 666. I don't know if that's a warning that we need to be concerned about, but it's on his watch. Okay. The other things that I have several different pages highlighted in orange that emphasize areas that I think have been of significant concern to us as a council, and in particular council majority, as it talks about different areas that we really want to make sure we maintain a high funding for. Older adult services. What are some of the other items here? Sorry, my tabs are stuck. Library, older adult services, recreation, police and fire, all these different areas that we have touted for so long as being essential for the smooth and efficacious management and function of our city. Code enforcement. To see all these different things and to see where we are at, to see where we're at with in this coming year with the estimates is greatly appreciated, and I support you all, Jeff and everyone else, for allocating as we have desired for so many years. The outliers, the big items that seem to be why is there such a big difference between years 14, 15 to 16, 17, and next year? They all were explained by speaking with staff in advance, or by just digging a little bit. You can be able to see and understand why those outliers are there. But overall, it still winds up being an excellent balanced budget, one that I can live with, one I think that is very conservative, and that we know that would be modified and will evolve over the course of the next several months as more information and data come in, as we have our workshop, as was previously mentioned. So I'm very pleased with it. And again, guys, great job, a ton of work, just amazing, and it's really appreciated.
Councilmember Masson. Sorry, Councilmember Gallo.
As Joan alluded to earlier, I met with the two blue over there. Jody wasn't there. I only have 2 seats in my office, so Jody couldn't come.
Jody is wearing black because the budget is on black.
Good observation. Kind of rare for you, but that's okay.
No red. No red today.
And I had a lot of questions, as we all do. Okay, they answered all my questions that I had. I do have a concern. Patricia Borschman brought that up earlier about 2018 with the increase that we're looking at. And the mayor keeps telling us that we have some tough years ahead of us. Well, that's a tough year. So what that says to me is we have to really pay attention to economic development. I mean, we really have to get on board with that, because one thing we have to do is increase our revenue. And we have issues with auto sales coming up. We have issues with regional malls. We have one. Regional malls across the country are in trouble. We live and die on sales tax revenue, as we saw in the last, did they call it a recession, or what was that called? Economic downturn. Okay. We dropped, what, $20 million in revenue that year? That's a big chunk of dough. We can't afford to do that, not with CalPERS biting us on the backside every year. So, I've been around long enough that I remember when CalPERS was super funded, we didn't have to worry about this stuff. The money was rolling in, and we were doing well, and we did our 3% revenue projections, and we always came under. Now it's a different ballgame. And I give a lot of credit to our new city manager. The guy's been on the job 3 months. Or is it 4?
Staff does it.
Okay? But, everything starts from the top. Jeff has taken charge, looking for efficiencies, cost savings, i.e. library, increasing service levels, community outreach. You know, see, a lot of folks don't understand some of the things that the city manager does, but this guy is on the ball. But my main focus right now is, I like the budget, okay? The numbers are a little scary, but we can handle it. And the best part about it is, we're only going to spend what we take in. If we could project that up to Sacramento, we would be in such great shape. And not using reserves. We did that one time before when we had an economic downturn, but that was because our projection was out of whack, and that's when we had a budget subcommittee that I was on for like 5 or 6 years. That was the only year, if I could go back and change one thing that I ever did as a council member, it would be accepting that 5% projection. We fell short, and we had to dip into our reserves to pay the bills. And we ain't going to do that anymore. The projection this year, I like the 3%, conservative, okay? But I'm telling you, you got to work. We have a young lady that's the head of our economic development department. We have to really work on economic development. That's going to be our salvation, okay? Cutting employees or whatever like that, yeah, we can do that. But I think our better course of action would be to see how we can increase our revenue. And, oh, the bake sale lady left. Okay. So if we have to have a bake sale, we have to have a bake sale, okay? So anyway, I'm good with it. Like I said, my questions were answered yesterday. I had quite a few of them. I questioned some of the fee increases and all this other kind of stuff, and alarm and Rincon Fire, making sure that they're paying their share. I bring that up all the time. But anyway, I'll pass the gavel.
Thank you all, thank you staff for the wonderful work. I have to address some comments that they were made that concerns me. A lot of questionable comments were made from the dais here that we are not transparent, we are secretive, we don't have a public process. You know what? I have attended these 2 council meetings subcommittee, and there was a lot of discussion and a lot of in details things, but that the other 3 council members did not have this advantage in listening to all the public comments and things. I want to thank the city manager, Jeff Epp, to only have a couple of items on the agenda and have time for the budget public hearing. That's why we dedicated this council meeting to the budget process. I want to make sure we understand the city manager, city council type of government. City council cannot go and look at the code enforcement salary or a park ranger's salary or a part-time this. This is under the city manager's directions, period. We cannot go into the operational part of the budget. What the city manager did and what our staff did is they asked the city council in an action plan that was half a day public hearing, and I think we had a couple of public speakers of that. We advertised it, we told the whole community, come and give us your input. We had half a day of public hearing about setting the city council action plan priorities. And that's why the city staff have collected the city council priority and then developed a budget accordingly. This is not the time to go to that level of operational issue and tell the police how many bullets we need to buy or how many fire hoses we need for the fire department. These are operational issues. We have the best staff, the most qualified staff, department heads to make these determination, and this is under the city manager's purview. The skate park is under capital improvement. It's not in the general fund budget. The Reedy Creek have been addressed. The grants, can you put this grants pie chart back, please? So the $5.4 million is for streets. Is that Sandag revenues or different grants?
That's actually a combination of a couple of different grants. We have 2 Sandag grants included in the $5 million. There's also some highway safety improvement program funding and some active transportation funding. But yes, that's 2 of the Sandag grants that we are working right now are included, and we have 2 more that have not been included yet because they weren't on the books as of last July.
My point is we should not include the Transnet money, the $3.5 million that we get from Sandag as a grant.
Oh, no.
Okay.
Right.
All right. I just want to
These
make
are
sure.
these are only competitive grants
Right.
that we received in addition to our normal allocation of
And
transit
actually, that was a good suggestions brought by Councilmember Diaz, and I think I'm glad to see that kind of big picture. You know, that's what we have. You know, a lot of money that we go after, and the staff is doing an excellent job on that. Can you put the expenditures, the 7% increase and the 3% increase in revenues? I did ask this question. We all, I think personally, and I think the council members as well, we spend a lot of time in these budget documents. We have had it for almost more than a week, and also the discussion about the budget has been going on for months. We had another council meeting on the budget process as well. So we had a balanced budget last year and this year, but the staff report says the 7% the expenditures are going up by 7%, and the revenues are going up by 3%. And my understanding is the 7% increase in expenditures because we included the recreation budget in the general fund budget. It was separate, right? But the 3% does not include all the revenue of the recreation center, recreation department.
So what happened was the 16-17, I added the recreation revenue
Correct.
to 16-17. So when you did the comparison, it only shows a 3%. If I had left recreation out of the 16-17 number, then our increase to revenue would have been 6%, which explains how we got a balanced budget.
Excellent. So I want to make sure that when we included the recreation, we included the revenues and expenditures. So we're doing it properly. So that's the discrepancy between if we should have the same percentage if the budget is $98 million. So that answers my questions. I want to thank the staff I think that's the easiest format I've ever seen. Of course, I had some questions. I asked them. They were answered by the staff. And also, we have all the salaries. Okay, the city council and the mayors, they are there on the website. So it's accessible to the public. They can go and see the mayor's salary, city council's salary, city manager's salary, everyone's salary. If you want to go into the employees level, they are available through a link through the state. So we are a transparent government. Even after we cut down all this formatting and we provided pie charts instead of text and everything else, even under this format, we have more details than other cities. So, maybe we can argue about the format, but this does not translate of lack of transparency. And I was concerned to just connect the two. And if we didn't have it at the Mitchell room and have 3 hours, then the public, we are trying to hide something from the public. We are not. We have all night to talk about the budget tonight, and that's why we had this public hearing. And I believe this is an important document that I suggested that all 5 council members should be included in the public hearing process. We cannot have them in a subcommittee format. I like the content of the budget. I like the revenue and expenditures trend. And also, the budget details and questions most of the questions have been answered, and the rest of it is available online, which would be a lot easier for the public to access. Now, we do have $17 million in reserves, and that's probably enough to cover our cash flow. So if we have an emergency, I don't have enough money to deal with it. We have to let people go or whatever it is. But if you look at the most important document that Olga, you haven't looked at, is the projections for 18, that's attachment A, the projection for 2018-19, 19-20, and 2021. If you add the deficit, the projected deficit, it's to $18 million. You have 1.8, you have 7.5, and $8.6 million, and mostly because of the pension, increase in pension, and increase in benefit, and increase of doing business. It's not only for Escondido, it's for all the jurisdictions under the pension. You know what? We're going to have the workshop, we're going to have the real figures, but the figures that we have right now is $20 million out of the general fund. It goes to the pension. And this figure, the projection, it's going to go up drastically to $40 million. It's nothing the city has done wrong, but it is because of the CalPERS projection and return on investment. And even at the 7%, these figures that we have, it's 7%. If they lower it, we're going to have some serious problem in maintaining our core service function to the community if we don't do anything different. Councilmember Gallo is right. We have to focus on revenues and look at the sales tax revenues. They were $20 million not too long ago. Now they are $36 million. That was a record. Now they are expected to be $38 million. So our good council policy direction has created a good stream of revenues. And that's why our police, by the way, and fire in this budget are fully staffed. We had, I believe, 150 sworn police officers. The fire department and the police department are fully staffed. Is that accurate, Mr. App? Yes. Okay. Just want to make sure. The council now, we have changed the priority over the time because we have the main priorities. And now I like that little thing signed by Mr. App, the appearance of the city and the public safety, and we need to run the city efficiently. We want to save the library. We want to save the services at the same level we have it today, but we have to be very, very creative and efficient in running the city business. Yes, this is the 6th consecutive year of balanced budget in the city of Escondido. I don't think many jurisdictions can brag about that. A structural balanced budget, it means that you spend what you make, you don't spend any more. And it was not easy. It was very difficult. And I want to thank the staff, department heads, and every single employee in the city of Escondido who contributed to come up with efficiency, different ways to maintain the services, but doing it more efficiently. If we don't have to maintain cars and trucks in our city and outsources and save $1 million, why not? If we want to maintain, the goal is to maintain the library service. Doesn't matter who does it. So I think we're going to see some creative, we didn't have to do that if the very alarming pension obligation is increasing by millions of dollars every year. So we have to be prepared, and I think this is what the council here has done, has made a priority, and we look forward for 2, 3, 4 years from now to make sure we continue to have a balanced budget. So I will be concerned to use one-time money that we're going to receive from the state for operating budget. Those one-time money should be done for certain project, pay CalPERS obligation, maybe increase our reserves fund to the $20 or $25 million, but we will have this discussion at a later time. But I want to thank you. This is a great thing. Again, I think you have received few suggestions here and there to fine-tune that budget process, and I am sure that you can accommodate that. So congratulations, staff. Congratulations, City Council, and for a balanced budget, another structurally balanced budget in the city of Escondido. And we need a motion now to approve the resolution and also the appropriations limit, GANN limit as well.
Two votes.
No, we can take them in one. We need two motions, or we need one motion. Well, let's do now the GANN. For fiscal year 17-18. So this motion by Deputy Mayor Masson and second by Mike Morasco is for the GANN limits. Please vote. GANN minutes. GANN. Okay. All right.
5 yes votes.
Okay, and then we go now, we need a motion to approve Resolution 2017-75, 2017-76 for the budget. Is that correct?
Yep.
Okay. We have a motion and a second? Is it, the first one, what's the first?
Yes.
With the amendments, okay, that's absolutely right. Please vote.
My name was on there.
Okay,
Was.
all right.
4 yes votes. Diaz voting no.
Okay, moving on to future agenda items. Any questions, council? Okay, council members, subcommittee reports. Council member Gallo.
Hello. First, I want to congratulate or thank, there's a young girl walking out now, high school girl, I guess. I don't know what school she's from. You guys are from Escondido High? Okay. How'd you enjoy the budget meeting? Pretty boring, huh? Yeah.
Riveting.
There you go. San Diego County Water Authority. I forgot to mention this last time, but they're going to start using drone technology to survey different facilities, et cetera. So my question at the time was, are you going to notify people when they're in the area? Because I don't want to have somebody with a shotgun start shooting them out of the sky. Because you come over to my place, see ya. And I think I mentioned last time, we have a $1.6 billion budget that we'll be discussing next week. And obviously, cybersecurity is a high priority today, especially where it concerns our water supply. I think that's pretty critical. And North County Transit, tomorrow we'll be discussing our budget there for 102, what did I write down? 103 million. So that's it.
Great, Councilmember Massa.
Yeah, thank you. I spent last Thursday and Friday up in Sacramento, League of California Cities. Had a budget briefing. Talked about the SB 649, which is the small cell legislation that Hueso is carrying, and the League is adamantly opposed to this. It affects our local control, takes decision making out of our hands and puts it in the hands of the state. I think we probably already sent the letter opposing that, but if we haven't, we should. Thursday was Housing Community Economic Development. We had a speaker regarding the CDBG program, and they're asking the cities to write letters to keep that program intact so we can keep spending the money. So if we want to do that, we can. We had a little presentation on EFIDs and tax increment financing items. I gave those pamphlets over to Jeff so he can do with it what he wants. The one thing we took action on was AB 6623 from Assemblymember Bloom regarding the coastal resources, low and moderate income housing. Essentially, it's a plan to enable the Coastal Commission to control affordable housing and housing along the coast within the coastal communities within their jurisdiction. Our committee was adamantly opposed to that. I think it was unanimous opposition. On Friday was the Environmental Quality Policy Committee meeting. We had several items of action. The first one, we had a separate meeting with EQ and the Transportation Commission Public Works Committee, basically to talk about SB 231, which is a redefinition of sewer to add stormwater within the sewer definition. Prop 218 was voted on by the voters back in the day, and essentially this proposition would, or Senate bill would, allow us to raise fees and generate taxes and fees on our residents for stormwater, which essentially has been an unfunded mandate from the state. So anyway, it was very divided in our committee and divided discussion. It ended up being a support from that Transportation and Public Works Committee. Not a surprise. You had a bunch of Public Works folks there that want money to build storm drains, so I figured it would go that way. We took it back to our committee. We voted again. This is the second time we voted on that. Very divided, and again, it was voted to support changing that language. I thought it was a dupe on the voters and kind of sneaky way to approach things, but be that as it may. The last thing, we took a position on SB 5, which is the California Drought, Water, Parks, Climate, Coastal Protection, and Outdoor Access for All Act. It's like this gargantuan money bond that's got everything in it you want. The committee took a support with amendment, essentially trying to max out the allocation to the cities for their parks and set a base at $200,000 minimum, and then it would go up from there based on your per capita allocation. So that was the league's position. They want, we want money for the cities. And then the last thing was we had community choice aggregation on the agenda, but we didn't discuss it. We had a policy we were trying to craft. We didn't take any action. It's going back to a subcommittee to discuss and formulate a policy position that we'll probably vote on at our next meeting. So
question?
That was it.
Question? Yeah.
You go discuss that. Agencies and regions in the Midwest and on the East Coast use community choice energy contracts where the energy is produced by, I guess, smaller hubs of independent companies, and then they run these things like a co-op. So the energy cost to the end user, so a house or a business, is a lot cheaper than what we pay here because they are not charging themselves a premium. Kind of like our water rates only cover really the cost of water. I mean, imagine if water were privately run, people would be charging $500 a month because you got to have it, right? So same thing with energy. So it feels unheard of to us here, but now that I've experienced it in other places, it's very common. It shouldn't be that complicated. So it's not as scary, I think, once you've been exposed to it. So I'll start bringing back some information so that we can see it's very common in other places.
You're referring to Encinitas and the coastal communities. It's not as easy as it sounds. We have looked into that already. It's driven by environmental groups. The cost saving is not there. That's the information we have. I think Graham Mitchell looked into that in the past, but we'll be happy to monitor that. If there is a saving, then we will look into it, but it's environmentally driven and the cost saving is not there. At least we haven't seen it in the past time we evaluated that, but we keep an eye on it. And that's why only 3 cities now are involved in that process, the coastal communities. We haven't seen the big cities participating. One second.
Where I've experienced it, it has nothing to do with the environment. It has to do with containing costs. And so it's a totally different perspective, right? I understand the environmental side of it here in California, but in other places, it's not about that. It's about business and price, and it works really well for people. That's why I say there's got to be some opportunity here for us to learn more and explore and mimic it. For you, it could be about price. For me, it could be about environment, but there's good things in it if we wanted to explore it.
If there is a savings, we will be the first city to jump in there and save money. At Sandag, we had an executive committee meeting and also a board of directors meeting. We are monitoring AB 805. Still, the opposition is the same from the 16 cities. It's a nonpartisan opposition. 16 cities, they still feel they will be disenfranchised from the process, even with the amendments made to the bill. They still give the 2 cities the power to spend the $1.4 billion a year down south, and we will not get hardly any money up north. I have seen every mayor at the executive committee opposing that and strongly opposing that because they feel if this passes, why bother and go to the Sandag meeting? It's just that bad. And to just reflect how bad this bill is by Lorena Gonzalez Fletcher, it went through 3 committees already. Not a single Republican voted for it, but not only that, 3 Democrats voted against it. It should be a nonpartisan, but that's how much merit. The 3 Democrats that they voted against it, they feel that this is a local government issue. We should not go to that level and take that away from them. We will keep monitoring it. I think there are, the opposition to this is growing and growing in a big way against the state of California, the SB 54 and other overreach to local government, and we will see how that goes. The budget have been approved. It's our budget is service driven. The SANDAG budget is infrastructure driven. That's why the $1.4 billion, it's about 1.25 of that, sorry, 1.2 billion of that goes for infrastructure and roads and public transportation. Very little goes, and also the probably about 100 million goes to operational public transportation and others, and also very little for operation as well. Again, for the second year in a row, SANDAG, based on my recommendation, I led this effort. They have now a pension obligation fund that we're putting $4 to $5 million a year, and now this is to mitigate the really spike in pension reform. And I think that alone, now this is the second year we create this fund, and the savings for SANDAG over this 2 years period is $29 million in pension obligation. I think maybe we should explore it more and look into this and see how can we manage that pension issue as well. That's all what I have. Oral communications, I don't have any requests. Next council meeting is June 21st. We will be discussing the capital improvement budget, I believe. So the public, you can be prepared and come with your questions. We'll give you enough time to answer any questions you may have. All right, with that, this meeting is adjourned. Have a wonderful evening.